Teachers of Reddit, what's the worst fight you had to break up? OMG, I can answer this one. My first year teaching, I was stuck in BFE, farthest away from the security office, near a door that led to a side street, so when fights did happen, the culprits could just run away without repercussions. Suffice to say, I saw some crap. So, fist fight starts right outside my room. As a female teacher without restraint training, I didn't try to break it up but rather tried to keep a perimeter for the ever-tightening circle of spectators. At some point, one boy slams the other's head on the corner of a metal railing. The kid's forehead just splits and now blood is everywhere. Bloody McBlooderface then gets shoved into me and I am now covered in blood. Kids are going wild. They're loving it. At this point, security arrives. Security on our district, a large public urban school, were legit, armed, uniformed city police officers. Their sob for stopping a fight isn't to touch anybody, it is to just mace the crap out of everyone until it breaks out. So, the two kids get maced, including bloody McBlooderface, who is now on the ground getting kicked. The crowd gets maced. I get maced directly in the face. The crowd disperses. Combatants get taken away in handcuffs. One of the students in my class begins to have an asthma attack because dumb ace. So I was covered in blood, neck, chest, arms, sobbing and gagging and coughing due to the mace, with a kid having an asthma attack, and none of my fellow teachers would cover my class so I could take my asthmatic kid to the nurse. Also, did I mention I was covered in freaking blood, including a fair amount on my bare skin, and had to take care of that? I was so pee. Walked the kid to the nurse, stripped down to my tank top and threw away my shirt and cardigan. Had to fill out a bunch of OSHA paperwork due to potentially being exposed to bloodborne pathogens. Went back to my classroom, told the students not to talk to me for the rest of the day, and started looking for teaching jobs elsewhere because frick colleagues who won't cover for you when you're covered in mace and someone else's blood and have a student having an asthma attack. Frick you, Tracy. It was your freaking prep period and you couldn't help me out, you miserable old C. Frick Tracy. I was in class one day and my teacher was a nice 50-something-year-old sensitive nice man. These two freshmen, one small and thin but still a fighter and a really chubby guy, were roasting each other until the little guy got pee and they went at it. They were throwing each other at the board and throwing punches and the whole class was in shock. My poor teacher had to step in but they did not want to stop and he was getting hit too. Finally some girl said help him after 45 seconds of all of us staring in awe and they broke it up. My teacher said he was sore the next day lol. Used to teach at a rough school. I was on my only prep period for the week and I was Skype interviewing for a new job. The school was closing due to consolidation. I heard a commotion in the hallway and I told the interviewers to wait a minute. I was expecting some kid to be running or something. Nope. Two middle schoolers with a crowd not around, but on both sides because it's a hallway. A teacher was yelling, ineffectively, at the two students, one who had a switchblade out and another who was talking crap. I swam through kids until I was behind the kid talking crap and I was telling the crowd to get away. They got away, and then I was trying to calm down both of the kids, basically talking calmly about calming down and stuff. Got in between the kid who was talking crap and the kid with the knife, and the kid with the knife said frick you too Mr. McMendez and lunged at me. He missed. I grabbed his arm and kidney punched him. Kid went down and dropped the knife. I got the knife and held the kid down until a few more teachers, the resource officer, and the principal came. Both the kids went with the principal and the cops came after. Principal got a rundown from me and I went back into my room. I then went back into the interview and said I had to stop a fight. Few minutes later the cops came to ask questions and the interviewers heard the account and I could hear the holy crap from the screen. Me and the kids went over social and emotional stuff the next day and how to help each other emotionally and handle situations. Don't know if that was a requirement but I wanted to go over that. I've boxed and wrestled for over a decade, so if some other teacher had tried to intervene I have no idea how that would have worked out. I just really want to know if you got the job. My boyfriend is a security guard person at a high school in a pretty harsh area of LA and had to break up a fight between two girls who had found out their boyfriend was cheating on both of them. Weaves were pulled off. One bit the other's arm till she started to bleed. Two black eyes. Bloody noses. It was intense and the girls got suspended. That boyfriend just sat and watched with his friends, thinking he was the crap. Also, one time, two guys got in a fight over who got the last piece of pizza during lunch. They broke each other's nose. Hey man, pizza is a legitimate reason to fight. I can give you a crazy one. These kids were 7. Small private school I taught at had a parent come to the homeroom one day to take his son and another boy out. A teacher knew the parent and didn't think anything of it as the boys were classmates. Turns out the dad had been told the boys had had a falling out, marched them to the roof of the school and had them fist fight each other. Apparently a janitor saw it and intervened, but you can imagine how insane the boys' parents went. Much stricter policies now. I am a teacher in Japan. I had 2 students adamantly fighting over who won the game we just played. I told them to play rock paper scissors and the conflict was solved. Everything in Japan can be solved by rock paper scissors. I was an intervention specialist in a math class with my co-teacher. 2 girls in the class were working, but began to exchange words out of nowhere. I tried my best to redirect them, but once one of them mentioned the other's mom, it was about to go down. Desks flew across the room as one girl stormed towards the other and grabbed her by the hair. There was slapping, scratching, and hair pulling. The other students were egging them on as I tried to separate them by holding one of them back, which I really should not have been doing. My co-teacher was standing there for a good 30 seconds before I had to yell at him to get security to help break the fight up. I only had a couple bruises from the desks and there was one girl's weave all over the floor of the classroom. My father worked at the Hickey School, the place where the Baltimore City public school system sends any student that was deemed emotionally disturbed, so he essentially taught permanent ISS to kids like Kennard. Performing restraints on fighting students dislocated his finger bone to the point of requiring pins, which meant he couldn't go swimming when we went down the ocean, and on another occasion he tore his rotator cuff. These days he teaches a much more quiet job at the state prison. You know crap's bad when this is true. I was with my 8th grade homeroom class when a student pointed out a fight outside at the 9th graders' lunch. I hopped out my window and ran up on the most pathetic fight ever. 2 kids dancing circles, cutting every threat on earth and not throwing a single punch. Pretty sure their friends forced them into the face-off and neither had the guts to initiate. I walked them both to the office and let our principal know how the fight had gone. Strangely, one of them ended up being my neighbor years later and broke into a widow's house and sexually assaulted her at knife point. Wish he had remained a coward instead of finally acting on something. Alcohol played a large role. He's still a coward. Didn't have the balls to face his actions. He had to be on the sauce to do it. Don't know if I'm an butthole for saying it, and it sucks that it happened to that poor woman. Whatever choice folks make, at least have the dang courtesy to answer for them. I taught a small English class in Korea, only like 4 kids, age 7, in Korea. I sat at the table end with them on either side. Anyways, 2 of the boys, I'll just say Jinsu and Taemin, were rowdy. They were also good friends. However, one day in particular, I noticed Jinsu gassing up Taemin all day, just really jabbing at him, getting under his skin. They come to my class, sit down, open their books, and Jinsu is laughing, being a goof. Taemin is acting weird, so stoic, doesn't respond to me or anyone, just keeps staring at Jinsu. So, whatever, I get to teaching. I look down at my book, and before I could react or know what the heck is happening, Taemin lunges across the table and stabs Jinsu on the top of his hand with a pencil. For that moment, it's tranquil. Jinsu looks at me. I look at the pencil, which is sticking strongly out of his hand. Taemin looks at the pencil. I look at Taemin. Jinsu looks at the pencil. Then we all start yelling. Jinsu obviously starts crying, but Taemin does as well. Jinsu stands up and starts running around the room with a pencil stuck in his hand harder than King Arthur's sword. I couldn't catch him. I've never been so shell-shocked as a teacher. Just pure disbelief. I never saw those kids again after that day. TLDR. Student stabs other student with a pencil. 2 girls started fighting out of nowhere outside and there were no other staff around to help me break it up. I ran up to one of the girls I had a good relationship with and attempted to hold her back. What I actually did was tied both of her arms up behind her back, allowing the other girl to punch her at will because there was no one there to hold her back. It was literally like in the movies when one bully grabs the kid and the other proceeds to beat the crap out of them. I was able to swing her around and shield her with my back, but it was too late. The damage was done. She got her nose broken and a cut on her eye. I felt so bad. I was just cleaning up my shoe rack today and the pair of shoes I was wearing that day still has drops of her blood on them from. Dude, wash your shoes. I finally have a relevant story. This is UK high school, meaning like 11-16 age range. There is also 6th form at that school, so really 11-18, but that's not important. In most of my classes throughout high school we had a fat kid. I say a fat kid because this guy make everyone else look malnourished. I do not joke when I say he was so overweight he struggled to walk the length of the school in between lessons and wasn't forced to wear uniform shoes as he'd had trouble getting a pair that properly fit. The best way I know to describe him would be the lady who Harry Potter turns into a balloon. Post-ballooning, fat kid gets mad about something and starts pouring water on all over the German textbooks in protest. I'm talking full on flood damage levels of soaking here. He gets sent away to the cool down room and gets told off, etc. In the meantime, sleazy pose kid starts spreading rumors about fat kid's mum dying on the weekend, which if true is a dong move, and if untrue WTF dude. Fat kid finds this out and confronts Pose. The argument quickly turns south and Pose swings for fat kid, not realizing that his wimpy 13-year-old attacks basically just get absorbed completely by the fatty body armor this guy has cultivated. Fat kid wins up for the biggest punch I've personally ever seen and unleashes it on Pose guy. The result was Pose literally flying a meter or so into a table. I'm not sure if he actually just fell or if he slid or what, but the image of fat kid freaking on punching the dude and him just flying has been ingrained in my memory for a full 4 years. Teachers were immediately there to break up the fight, but Pose clearly wasn't gonna get back in the ring with fat kid, who had walked off by himself for a good cry. The crowd that had gathered dispersed and news of what had happened diffused through the school. CCTV evidence caused the school to state that fat kid was acting in self-defense. Apparently his mum had said he would be staying with his dad full-time as she wanted to move countries. Mad times. Haven't seen him for a couple of years. Someone showed me a Snapchat of him a month or so ago and he's still a homunculus. Hope his family life is better now. One Punch Man wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual. Obligatory, not a teacher, but my 8th social studies teacher told me a story of how some old woman, subbing for another teacher, had left the room for a couple minutes. She returned to one kid getting his throat cut open with a pencil sharpener blade. My teacher had to step in, obviously. I used to substitute teach in a large inner city district in the Midwest. I would see fights a couple times a week, usually pretty minor stuff. Someone talked trash, the other person didn't like it and took a swing. A few punches get thrown. Security shows up and takes the students to the office. Drama over. Now, as a substitute teacher who is not covered by the union and doesn't get paid nearly enough money to risk life and limb breaking up fights between significantly bigger students that won't be talked down. We were specifically told that we would be fired if we physically intervened to break up a fight. So at one particularly rough high school, a couple of students that are both about 6'5" and around 250-300 pounds start getting into it in the hallway during class. And I did what I was supposed to do, called the office, by cell phone. My underfunded school didn't even have landlines, alerted them of a fight, and went into the hallway to try and talk them down. Student 1 says F, you, N-word, and the other one says what, N-word, you want some of this too? That student walks towards me. I walk away. Then the other student sucker punches the second student right in the face and the fight ensues. Security shows up a couple minutes later and breaks it up. Both students are bruised but no serious injuries occurred. I give my report to administration and get back to teaching. 1 hour later, I got called to the principal's office, who immediately starts yelling at me for not breaking up the fight. I said, you know I'm a substitute teacher, right? because it has been well established that subs who break up fights through physical means will get fired. The principal said, "I don't care. You should have broken up that fight. After today, you will no longer be allowed to teach at this school. In this district, a school can ban a substitute teacher for any number of often arbitrary reasons and substitutes have no recourse for appeal." So I went back to the rest of my day, taught my classes as I normally would, and saw the principal on the way out. He said, "Did you enjoy the rest of the day?" I said, "Go frick yourself," flipped him off with multiple gesticulations, and walked away. Inform him that someone who haven't read Catch 22 shouldn't be a principal. Well, I work with preschoolers. Worst fight I've seen is a fight over who gets the rainbow shaped block. Kid decides to steal the block from his friend's hand and smacked his friend in the head with it. This causes a whole cycle of things and before I know it, there's blocks everywhere and someone peed their pants. Not a teacher. At my old high school I watched a guy with a skateboard chase after another guy, who I knew pretty well, accusing him of stealing weed money from his house. He caught up to the second guy, who was denying everything, and started bashing his face with the skateboard. I and about 50 other high schoolers watched through the plate glass windows of the cafeteria as the guy was repeatedly thrown against that same glass. We all just stood there yelling and being generally stupid. Then a girl who I was pretty good friends with and who had no connection to either of the guys marched up yelling at the first guy to stop. She's a wrestler and football player and well known for being kind but very buff and strong. She somehow sent the first guy on his way and helped up the bleeding kid. Definitely the best fight I've seen on campus for the amount of blood and the awesome girl. Side note, don't feel bad for the bleeding boy. He's in butthole and probably did steal the weed lol. She's a wrestler and football player and well known for being kind but very buff and strong. Well, I don't know about the rest of you but my heart is aflutter. Not a fight exactly, but a friend of mine quit teaching after a girl startled him by jumping at him in front of his whole class and then said to the other students, "See, I told you he was AP." Everyone laughed and he quit the next day. I volunteered as a teacher's assistant in a pre-kindergarten class in Santa Cruz County around 2013. Most of the class consisted of girls, and I swear this will be important later. Well, there was this boy who happened to be in the class. His name was Zephyr. He had long blonde hair and bright blue eyes. He looked like a baby Thor. Over the course of the year, the girls in the pre-K class had developed a crush on wee little Zephyr. To them, he was like a god consorting with mere mortals. And at the tender age of 5, they made it their goal to make him their own. One day, during snack time, one of the girls, Estella, declared that she was going to marry Zephyr when they grew up. Another girl, Maria, wasn't having this and wanted to show Estella that she was destined to become Mrs. Zephyr. Then another girl, Gina, declared that she wanted to grow up to be Mrs. Zephyr as well. Then Angie proceeded to call dibs, followed by Kana, then Emma, and then Isabella. Within 5 minutes, what was once a peaceful period in the day erupted into World War III. 16 5-year-old girls threw themselves into a pile of G-rated violence. Kicking, punching, yanking on pigtails and ponytails. They did it all in the name of asserting dominance over a little boy who was cowering in a corner, scared out of his mind while a hapless teacher and 2 TAs tried to break up the scuffle. We managed to break up the fight and put the instigators into timeout. But dear gods, the way the girls turned a pre-K class into the Lord of the Flies was done messed up. And all over a little boy to boot. Whatever happened to being grossed out by the opposite sex because you thought they harbored the cooties virus? Goddammit. Haven't had to deal with a fight in years. I'd only break them up if they were really imbalanced. If both kids were buttholes, which they usually were, I'd let them soften each other up a bit before getting them separated. I work in an alternative high school 611 program. Just a couple weeks ago I broke up a fight in the gym and once the students were separated one of them punched a para in the jaw and buckled his knees. I've had a kid sucker punch another student because he didn't like the way he was talking to a girl. He broke his jaw. Had a boy that bit down on a girl's hand because of an argument in art and she couldn't get him to let go so she was clawing at his eyes. It got in between 2 students in the cafeteria who had started to fight and one of them hit me with a full strawberry parfait. Later, once the parfait dried, My shirt was crusted into a crumpled wad near my shoulder where I had been grabbed. Those were all from this year. Been there for 12. I love that place. I was working as a substitute teacher at the middle school. A small class walks in with about 20 kids. 10 girls and 10 boys. The boys and the girls sit on separate sides of the room except for one boy who sits by himself. I have a worksheet for them to do and hand it out. The boy sitting by himself is a little chubby kid that finishes his worksheet extremely quickly. I have nothing else for him to do, so I'll let him play with the board games in the classroom by himself. The other boys are working on their worksheets when I notice there is one boy that looks like a little gang member. He starts hassling the chubby kid and causing trouble along with his little friends. I tell him to calm down and start talking to him and reprimanding him. While that is happening, his friends go behind my back and start harassing the little chubby kid. Little chubby kid snaps and goes into a blind rage where he pushes a random kid that wasn't even interacting with him. This kid reacts by punching the chubby kid in the face, and the random kid had a bunch of rings in his hands, which cut up the chubby kid's face pretty badly. The chubby kid cries and I have to call administration and wait for help. The whole time the chubby kid keeps saying that every single day they are always bullying him and it was his brother's birthday today and he just wanted to have a good day. It was very sad, but from what I could tell all three were going to get expelled because zero tolerance. That's what the principal told me, at least as I was writing my report. I pointed out how I thought the chubby kid was a good kid and the real issue was the wannabe gang member, but no one cared. I was a student in American civics my senior year, and for the majority of it, a student teacher taught it. Awesome guy, was really passionate about politics but kept his own personal political views private. He was great at his job, and I learned a lot from him. He encouraged us to care about our government without making anyone feel like they were wrong for their opinions. One day two kids were freaking around. One peed the other off and fists started flying. Our student teacher tried to break them up and yelled one student's name in a big booming voice that scared the crap out of all of us. We all froze, including the two fighting. Here was this great student teacher who always had a great attitude suddenly using his scary voice, and holy frick did it work. Even the hot crap kids who acted tough sat straight up and just stared wide-eyed. He walked them both down, and when they didn't need him anymore, he came back and went. Well, that was a first for me in his usual chipper attitude. And that was the day I learned not to frick with the student teacher. Having a good command voice helps a lot. Totally not a teacher, unfortunately. I grew up in an area in North with a strong Sikh Indian community. They are the reason the town was flourishing and still is today, but being the minority they were picked on at school and bullied. Anyway, one of the Indians wasn't taking any crap one day and got into a fight. The fight was going like every other fight does until the Indian kid slipped his silver bracelet over his knuckles and punched this other kid in the mouth. It was horrific. The guy who got punched went into shock as he realized his face was now mangled. He was missing 4 teeth and had his nose broken. I'm a teacher at a low-income school, and probably the worst fight that I've seen involved 2 of my students punching each other out of nowhere and ended with one of them getting handcuffed in the hallway for trying to come back for the other boy. Another one that I wasn't involved with, but I still have this student in one of my classes, ended with the student hitting another student's head against the wall repeatedly. I've broken up several, but the aftermath of one was particularly bad. The worst ones were always between 2 girls, and the one that comes to mind was between a tiny, vicious white girl and a large black girl over who knows what. There was hair pulling, scratching, chair throwing, and banging heads on the cafeteria tables. They were both suspended. I bring up their race because this created a sort of problem in a southern rural area. In the aftermath, the white girl's cousin started tweeting racist crap and eventually said he was going to come up to school and shoot her. Keep in mind she was still suspended and therefore not even in the building. The school went on lockdown until police could locate him. He claimed he wasn't serious, but even after the suspensions ended, the white girl never came back to school. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.